So does the panel want to come up?
Good morning. Always good for me to follow somebody who knows something, can say it well, and in a way that is compelling and persuasive. My name is Peter Neal. I'm the director of the World Ocean Observatory. I'm a communicator, one of the few officially in attendance, although we have a magnificent one just before us. Our panel will run somewhat the way that all the other panels have done. We'll have our introductions, brief presentations, and then questions from the floor, and then some final statements. When I first was contacted by the organizers of the conference and given the title, I was completely flummoxed because of the word greed. It seems such an impolitic and unusual word to be put into the title of a UN UNESCO conference. I've never seen anything like it before, actually, in my experience, because it's so blatantly political. And so when you look at biodiversity conservation and the interlace between human need and human needs, well, we've talked about that a lot in this conference already. But we have never talked about greed, although the political implications of the word have underlaid everything that we've talked about all week long. So before I introduce the panel, I do want to say a few words about that, very few. But it strikes me that it is time for us to be a little less reluctant in the value of what you do. Greed is excess, the acquisition of value necessary. Pollution is also greed. Too much chocolate changing our sugar balance, and we diminish the health of our bodies. Too much acid in emissions changing pH, and we diminish the health of our water systems and ocean. Therefore, greed is another form of pollution, a value driver linked to unsustainable consumption that is negatively impacting land and sea, individual lives, local communities, and international security. Given the incontrovertible contradiction between the agents of greed and the needs of a burgeoning global population, we are confronting at this meeting, whether we like it or not, an existential moment demanding responsible reaction and change in the name of survival. I believe it's that serious, and the urgency that I think we all feel, and in my case, the frustration as an outside observer of the progress to date, threatening, as I did on Wednesday, to set myself on fire in protest, is so palpable, and the public is so prepared to act on the message. I think we are probably much more reluctant than they are. All right, our speakers are Mark Costello, who's from Ireland, studied in Galway and Cork, and has worked at Trinity College Dublin. He is now Associate Professor in Marine Ecology at the Institute of Marine Sciences in the University of Auckland, New Zealand. His publications are many. Joachim Claudet is a researcher at the French National Center for Scientific Research in Perpignan, France, and has organized community and conservation ecology, coastal ecosystem functioning, meta-analysis, environmental impact assessments, implementation of experimental and monitoring designs, indicator development, implementation of decision-making tools, and management plans, and much more. Patricia Miloslavich is a marine biologist from the University Simon Bolivar in Caracas, Venezuela, with her doctorate in oceanography from the University of Quebec, Canada. She works at the Department of Environmental Studies at University Simon Bolivar, where she has carried out teaching, curricula development, and research in the field of marine biology and ecology, and more. And finally, Simonetta Frascetti, I practiced it and I still blew it, sorry, associate professor in ecology at the University of Salento, Italy, whose career has combined field description research, manipulative experiments, and distribution analysis techniques for gaining better understanding of the pattern of distributions of marine biodiversity and processes. We will go in this order. We will start with Patricia, then Joaquim, then Simonetta, and then Mark. And then I will follow with a few closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here, and I thank the organizers for inviting me here. So, well, I'm going to talk to you. My presentation has this name. We are talking about need and greed, so I'll talk to you about the need, the use, the consequences. And it's basically about a project that I'm working with in a very large network around South America, assessing marine biodiversity in rocky shores. So that way, right? No. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we work in South America, not just because I'm from Venezuela and that's where I live, because as a place to study, it's quite interesting. It has a very, very large scale as a continent. It goes from 12 degrees in the north, which would be our Caribbean front, down to 55 degrees in the south, our Patagonia tip. It has more than 30,000 kilometers of coast divided in two major oceans, the Pacific, the Atlantic, but also this very interesting sea, which is the Caribbean. There are many, many gaps in knowledge. We recently made a compilement of all the information that we know about marine biodiversity around the continent, which was published in a collection of papers in PLOS ONE, and it's still much more what we don't know than what we know. Therefore, we wanted to study marine biodiversity patterns. It's a perfect place to do that when you have such large gradient in latitude. But also, South America is facing many, many issues. One of them, it's increasing development. The countries are moving forward into the developing world, and that has created a lot of new issues. All the resources are being increasingly used. Therefore, the consequences are much more impact by the day. There are 10 countries around the coast, which means different policies, different politics, different management plans, different conservation strategies, different cultures, and all around one same continent. So what we're doing here, we proposed a project which we called Marine Biodiversity and Biomass Assessments on Coastal Ecosystems in South America. We wanted to see ecosystem function, monitoring, initiate a monitoring program, but also see what are the human impacts. So basically we had two goals. The scientific goal, which had all these nice questions on biodiversity patterns and what are the drivers of these patterns and what is ecosystem function and how biodiversity provides this ecosystem function. But we also had a second component in our project, which is education. And basically not education just with our students at the university, but go target school children, school teachers, but also the divers who come to many places for tourism. So we initiated field campaigns in 2010. So far, we've worked for 4 years, and we've sampled more than 150 sites. And in this map, I can see where the red spot is. But in this map, all the red spots indicate a place that has been sampled, that has a rocky shore, an intertidal rocky shore. As you can see, we have a big gap between the Orinoco River and the Amazon River in the Atlantic, but that's not because we don't want to work there. It's because there are no rocky shores there, because that region is flooded with muddy systems. So just that you have an idea how the ecosystems look like, I have here some pictures from the Caribbean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific. All places in the Caribbean are between 11 and 12 degrees north in latitude, while in the Atlantic they go down from a little bit below zero, which is where the Amazon discharges, down to 55 in Ushuaia, Argentina. And in the Pacific, we go from around 9 degrees in Colombia, the Colombian Pacific, and down to Chile, to Punta Arenas. So quite different settings, a lot of changes, a lot of biogeographic breaks. So very, very interesting. So the use and the consequences. Before we started working, we compiled all the information about the sites we were going to work with at. And basically, we compiled what were the uses, what were the threats, and what were the impacts we were seeing. And basically, the uses that people give these sites, it's mostly food. People go to these places to get food. In a very the level in which they do that varies. They can go and be very intense and take about everything they find, or they can be just pick what they need, or subsistence kind of way. The second use was tourism, the beaches, the nice places to go, to dive, but increasingly more urbanization. So the cities were reaching all these nice places, and in some places they were already by a city. For example, Mar del Plata is one of our sampling sites, and Mar del Plata is a very populated place. So basically, food, tourism, and urbanization are the uses. And then the threats and the impacts mostly come, everybody agreed that sewage and water pollution from sewage discharges was a major issue. We're not very good down in South America on treating our waters, but also in the industrialization, the oil companies, oil and gas companies, freshwater runoff in a large continent under the pressures of rainy seasons, more sedimentation, and so on, were among the most important threats and impacts. So just to give an idea of the science that we're doing, I'm giving here 3 graphs showing the biodiversity patterns so far observed in the intertidal zone, the biodiversity of the intertidal zone around South America. So you can see it's a bimodal distribution with the highest upper right graph, highest diversity around 40 degrees south, then going down, and then up again, and going down. And by the tropics, it's a complete anarchy of variability between low and high. If we do the relationship between the primary producers and the predators for the different oceans, we see that in the Pacific, they go, they have a clear relationship between one and the other, while this cannot be seen in the Atlantic. And we're still working on how to figure out all of this data and comparing to the environmental variables. But the other part, the education, communication, what are we doing about this? Not all 150 sites have engaged, I have to be honest, in education, because not all of the team has the time and especially the time to commit to education. But we have done protocol manuals, which we have carried to school. We work with the children at the schools, show them, take them to the coast, teach them how they can be monitoring themselves, their own ecosystem, so they can see the changes. And besides the manuals, with the protocols, we show them how to identify their animals so that they at least can, if they want to target just one species, they can do so. But also field guides to divers that come to these places to look at the biodiversity. So basically my message here is that we will continue, we need to use the coast. We will continue to do it as much as we can, or as much as we are allowed to do it. So if we're going to do that, we need to understand what the changes, how the ecosystem, how biodiversity will respond to our pressures. And this we can only do by initiating these baselines and by monitoring year by year how this is changes, not only in the face of our exploitation, but also in the face of ocean, the changes in the ocean. But more importantly, we need the people to care that these changes are happening. And the best way to make people care is to target, our best bet is to target the young generations, because they are the ones who will have the responsibility in the next in the near future, and not only that, the responsibility, but also who will suffer all the consequences of any thing that we do on the ocean. So basically, this is not just me. I just want to introduce here all the network of the people in the South American Research Group of Coastal Ecosystems. It's a group of very talented and very inspirational people, and basically that's what I wanted to tell you, so I'll give to the rest.
So hi everyone. I will try to present you brief things about the theme of the panel, if it comes. Yeah, thank you. So let's look backward for a while, and these are women mosaics, which shows how people were seeing the sea before. You can see plenty of fish and big fish. Some of them are, you can really identify them. And you can see even that people thought that they could be eaten by groupers. Okay, so now outside of any MPA, I doubt any grouper can eat anyone because they don't exist anymore. They are too small. So it's just to show that the wealth of the sea a little bit before. And in the same line, and I've taken this from a book chapter from Simonetta here, which quoted Huxley, who said about the American bison, and that I'll let you read this, but I believe that the cod fishery, the herring fishery, the pilchard fishery, the mackerel fishery, etc., and probably all the great sea fisheries are inexhaustible. And we have seen with Daniel that it is really not the case. And any attempt to regulate these fisheries seem consequently from the nature of the case to be useless. We know that we need to have knowledge of the system we exploit or we use to gain proper management. And the reason for that is that we think that everything is ours, so we can use it in the way we want, which is, of course, not the case. Another example of how people are using the sea. And so this is, I think Simonetta will show you this maybe in more detail, just to show you that we are using the ocean everywhere with a variety of users, and they all accumulate or interact. There is almost no place with not a human footprint in the ocean. And when we focus a little bit on fisheries, on the management effectiveness on fisheries, we can see that there is no area, almost no area that is properly managed. So our efforts are not in accordance to the threats we impose on the ocean. A little bit of history about how we manage the nature in general and also the ocean. Before we consider nature for itself, then nature despite people, then nature for people, with all the ecosystem services it can provide. And now we are more into considering that people and nature all together. And so we went from a monospecific approach of managing resources, so on a species per species basis. Then we thought that it was important to integrate management with a land-based management, sea management, and a bunch of different disciplines. Then we went for the ecosystem approach, and now we are focusing much more on the social-ecological approach, where we account for feedbacks between human and environment in both directions. To be successful, social-ecological approach and management accounting for social-ecological approach needs to be transdisciplinary. I won't go through this a lot because it has been approached the day before yesterday. It has to be place-based because of the complexity of all the components of the systems and all the differences that may appear from different socio-cultural contexts. All these approaches need to be place-based to be efficient. It is local management. And also it has to tackle a complexity science because those systems are complex and they have emergent properties that emerge only when you account for all the different components of the system. Just as a quick example, and I will finish after this, this is a coral reef. It's in Moorea, for French Polynesia. And the reef provides a variety of services for humans. Among those, we can quote coastal protections, or recreation, diving, tourism, and fisheries. When subsistent fisheries are really important here, and this is how they sell fish on the streets when they sell it. As you might be aware of, in coral reef, what bloom of a sea star that eats all the corals can happen. It is a natural thing, but we might think that it is enhanced by human activities and land-based pollution, but we are still not very sure. So this is how it looks. And what it can do, so this is the same place before and after this bloom of this sea star. And it's not the same area, the same place, it's exactly the same place. You can see this and this are the same here, okay? So you can see the effect it has on coral reefs. It's like when it's past and there have been a hurricane also, and it's like the moon. Okay, so no more corals, and of course, all the environment is highly affected. What I was interested here with the colleagues, it was to see how the social ecosystem was affected by this, how people react, what was the social resilience to these threats. And so you don't see it's on purpose. I won't go into all the details, but this is a Bayesian network. This is one of the options you can go through when you want to model a social ecological system and to see the effect, the interaction between social components and environmental components. So we have tourists, and we account for international tourists, local tourists, regional tourists from Polynesia, local people, different bunch of users. So here we'll just focus on this. So the sea star, the effect on the corals it had, and we show that by impacting that much coral, it has an effect on the users, and most diving operators that was operating on the external slope, so outside of the reef, which was like this, they couldn't bring people there anymore. So what did they do? They developed something that was already present in the area, but now it is much more developed. They bring people to shark feeding areas. So now it's in the lagoon. It is much more convenient because the sharks are there. It is less far than going on the external slope. They are already there. And so they are really happy about this kind of discovery of this new activity. And also a lot of users that were happening outside of the lagoon are now happening inside. And the consequences of that are that a lot of the local users of the lagoon, people now conflict for space, and the fishermen that were fishing inside the lagoon can't fish anymore in the lagoon, or it is more difficult. And the issue we have is that, as I told you, this is something natural, okay? This is 33 years of data from the same area of live coral cover, and you can see that you have periods of declines, of recovery, declines, recovery, declines, recovery. This is natural thing in coral reefs, okay? And this is the sea star bloom, and there was another here. So this is natural, but now that let's say this new opportunity for shark feeding here, but it could be anything else, happens, we still don't know, and we are monitoring the system, if this will be a social trap, if this use, which impacts a lot also the system, of course, will continue, or will the resilience go back to the external slope according to the recovery of the reef. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this very nice invitation. And I'm going to talk about the Mediterranean Sea. So this is a picture from our basin, still something to be protected. So we cannot talk about conservation and conservation targets in general without knowing detailed information about the distribution of biodiversity at different levels, so from species to habitat to ecosystem. And to be honest, for the Mediterranean Sea, I really want to be positive a lot of information already exists because in the last centuries we were accumulating so much knowledge about the distribution of species. Here you have some recent papers. This is a paper describing the species richness of fish, invertebrates, mammals, birds, so different ecological components, and recently also very nice information on vulnerable habitat like bioconstruction. So I would really begin with a positive message. For the Mediterranean Sea, we know a lot. We start from an important basic knowledge, not only on biodiversity, but also on threats. Before, Joaquin was showing you the big map by Halpern. With Fiorenza, we were revising a bit that work. And to be honest, I think that the information about the distribution and extent of cumulative pressure is very good for the basin. And this is really important because combining the information on biodiversity with the information on threats, we are really able to identify hotspot of biodiversity, hotspot of conflict for maritime spatial planning, and also definitely to set conservation priorities. So something that can be done. So everything is good? No, it's not, because definitely, even if a lot of information exists, to be honest, the conservation, the real conservation of the Mediterranean Sea is still a little bit behind. If you have a look to the, I'm sorry. Okay, so if you have a look to the percentages, I don't know if I'm, okay, so in anyway there, if you look at the percentages of protection are really very low. Putting together not only marine protected areas, but also the Natura 2000 site and the fisheries restricted areas, where we are really, well, we are protecting, and please consider that we are talking about protections that in many cases is just on paper. So we are protecting about the 5% of the Mediterranean Sea. So we have a lot of knowledge, but protection is still really behind. And we have another issue now that has to be solved. At European level, we talk very much about blue growth, the sustainable growth. And well, we don't know very well what is really sustainable. This is, let's say, a key word. If you go through the Horizon 2020, the Horizon 2020 is really oriented towards the blue growth strategy. It is talking very much about the sustainable growth, and for sure we are all aware that the marine environment is really important, is critically important for providing new jobs, but take care. Look at this. We have to balance the blue growth with conservation targets and with this good environmental status, which is the pillar of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Maybe a lot of you are aware that the Marine Strategy Framework Directive will be the pillar of the conservation and the management of the marine environment for the European countries for the next 10 years. So we have to put all these concepts together. But have a look. Before we were talking about aquaculture, and I absolutely agree that aquaculture is really a great opportunity, but have a look to this vision. This vision is that in the Mediterranean Sea, so we are talking about a small basin, by 2030 there will be an increase of 113% of this activity, which is really a lot. And when I saw this slide, I said to myself, wow, we don't know very much about aquaculture, I mean in terms of impact, as it is now. We don't know very much about the outcome of interactions with the other impact. So in a word, we talk a lot about multiple stressors, but we really don't know will be the consequence of this increase. So take care. About 1 month ago, it was organized in Rome an interesting congress the Eurasian Conference, and the Rome Declaration was delivered, another declaration. This Rome Declaration wanted to set a vision for seas and ocean science to achieve an ecosystem approach to the management of Europe's marine resources. So actions, solutions. And I totally agree that the three pillars are really the way to go. So valuing the ocean, so increasing our awareness that the sea and the Mediterranean Sea in particular are really important. Advancing ocean knowledge, both focusing on basic and applied research, putting together the two fields, which is really important, and breaking barriers. So putting together people, as we are here